And hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge back once again with another instalment of my Ultimate New 52 reading guide. So to give you the background, I have read the entire DC New 52, that's 3,646 single issues. I've used all that information to create the internet's most comprehensive map and infographic covering the entire New 52 and every single one of those issues, and this series is a result of that. Today's video is video 5.5. We are getting towards the end of the Batman family of comics in the New 52. Before you go any further in the video, I just want to stress, if you haven't watched the introduction video for the series, you really should. Even if you think you know what the New 52 is, even if you're only interested in one particular character to read, you still need to understand how this series works and this map works. Video 0.0 will cover a lot of the broad concepts, principles and jargon I use, things like the Forever Evil line and Type J readers. So if you want to understand what I'm talking about, you'll probably need to go back and watch that introduction. The link to that is going to be in the description below. But with that out of the way and without any further ado, here is the Ultimate New 52 reading guide. And today's episode is, as I said, getting towards the end of my massive deep dive into the Batman family. So let's just zoom into the center of the map here. Hopefully some of you have printed this off and downloaded it and so on, and you're following along at home. The Batman comics are north of Flashpoint, all these black circles here. As you can see, there are loads of them. We've covered over half of them now. And today what I want to dive into specifically is this series, which is to the west of the main line of Batman and the core comics. Just to the left of Detective Comics, what we have here is Batgirl, which is this bubble you can see me circling there, between Catwoman and Detective Comics. So let's dive into it. Batgirl came out from 2011 to 2016, so it ran for the whole of the New 52. It was written originally by Gail Simone and is frankly one of the most underrated gems of the New 52 universe, in a way, and I'll explain that in a moment. So what you see here with this picture here is Volume 1, The Darkest Reflection. That contains issues 1 to 6. Let's follow that line up and we get to the second Batgirl volume here, which is called Nightfall. That's Nightfall with a K. That contains issues 7 to 13. Now before we go any further, I just want to stress, this volume Nightfall has nothing to do with the series Nightfall from the 1990s. It was a very poor choice of name on DC's part, to be honest, and probably the only mistake Gail Simone made at this stage. So anyway, this volume, Trade Collection 2, Nightfall, contains issues 7 to 13. Now remember, issue 9 is part of crossover 1, Night of the Owls. And as I keep on saying, you don't need to read the entire event for this one-off issue to be readable. Also remember, issue 13 is part of crossover 2, Death of the Family. And again, you don't need to read the full event there to understand what's happening if you're only reading the Batgirl comics. However, I will need to say you do need to read that issue, at least issue 13, if not the whole collection, before moving on to the third collection in the Batgirl comics, which is, as we scroll up, this one. Picture of Joker on the cover, and it's called Death of the Family. Again, as I've warned repeatedly, many of these third collections in these series for the Batman family are called Death of the Family. Don't get confused by that. So, Batgirl Volume 3 contains issues 14 to 17. And again, the first 3 issues are part of the excellent Death of the Family event. Now, I'm not saying you need to read the actual event book to understand this. Don't worry, this collection has everything you need to know, including Batman 17, which is the finale issue. However, I would really recommend picking it up and reading it. It's a brilliant part of that crossover. Let's continue that along and we get to Volume 4, just before the Forever Evil line. And that contains issues 20 to 26 and also Batman the Dark Knight, issue 23.1. I know that's weird, but that's contained here and it does make sense when you read it. That villain's issue features a new ventriloquist who is very different from the pre-New 52 villain of the same name. And again, that's Volume 4, which is called Wanted. Highly recommended. Then carrying going up, and just as we cross the Forever Evil line, we get to Volume 5, the end of Gail Simone's run, which is called Deadline. Now, Deadline collects issues 27 to 34, Annual 2, and the Future's End one-shot. Right, those 5 volumes are all available as hardcovers, which is normally a badge of quality in terms of what was considered to be good and popular in the DC New 52. Overall, it's an amazing series, one I absolutely loved. However, I feel it's something I'm obliged to point out that whilst it was critically popular and popular in terms of sales, the writer Gail Simone was taken off the title and in October 2014, the series underwent a soft reboot. The new creative team included the writers Brendan Fletcher and Cameron Stewart. Now, that's a bit unfortunate, especially given it happened before the convergence line when these things normally reboot. However, things get a bit more complicated. If you've watched my Superman videos in this series, then you'll be familiar with what I'm about to tell you. Just to complicate things, DC then decided to start renumbering the collected volumes from number 1 again, without renumbering the issues. This confuses a lot of people, but what it means is that the spine for the 6th volume in this series actually has a number 1 on the bottom of it, despite containing issues 35 to 40. So it's not a new volume with a big V, which would start with a reboot with issue 1 again. It's the same volume of Batgirl, and it's got issues that continue on in numbers from 35 onwards, but the spine will have a different design and have a number 1 on it. It's very annoying and it's very odd. So why did all these odd things happen? Well, it's a good question, and it has to do with Gail Simone's somewhat tempestuous relationship with DC. A good indication of how difficult this relationship was is that the creative change actually happened, like I say, before the convergence line, and the convergence line was generally used as a simple way to cull a lot of series by DC. So in other words, they couldn't even wait the 5 months it took to end this run at a suitable endpoint. Anyway, it was a huge shame. Simone's work here was some of her career best, and it's criminal we haven't been offered an omnibus of this. So let's continue moving north, and we'll get to volume 6, which is when the new creative team take over. It's quite a way away. Hang on, let me zoom out a little bit. That's miles away. Yeah, it's right at the other end. It's right before the convergence line, and what we have here is what I'm going to call Trade Collection 6, which is the 6th collection or 6th volume with a small V here. However, this has a number 1 on the spine. Now, this 6th trade collection also signals a marked shift in tone for the series, away from the dark and intense Simone storyline to a much lighter, youth-orientated character. This is often called the Burnside era by Batgirl fans, and this is the Batgirl of Burnside storyline that everyone likes. Now remember, if you buy the collections, they're only available in paperbacks from this point onwards, so the non-Simone stuff is paperback only. This one will bafflingly have that number 1 on the spine, and here we are. So this is Trade Collection 6 with a number 1 on the spine. It's called Batgirl of Burnside, and it collects issues 35 to 40. Hopefully that was clear, guys. I know it's not pleasant. I know it doesn't make any sense. God knows what DC were thinking, but I feel it's really important I make that clear for you guys. This is still all New 52. Let's continue scrolling upwards. We go past the convergence line, and here we've got Volume 7, which is called Family Business. Now, Volume 7 will have a number 2 on the spine, and it collects issues 41 to 45 and Annual 3. Let's continue heading up, and right at the end here, what we have is Batgirl Trade Collection number 8 with a number 3 on the spine for some unknown reason. It's called Mindfields. That's not Minefields, that's a Mind, M-I-N-D, Fields. It collects issues 46 to 52 and a standalone one-shot that forms part of the event book for crossover 5, which is called Endgame. We discussed that in video 5.1. And this is a pretty weird place to collect it all in all, especially if you consider that it's actually not going to be very near to Endgame on the overall map. Sorry about that, guys. I've tried to group things as best I can, but some things is a little bit beyond my control. So, overall, I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of the Burnside era of the New 52 Batgirl. It's a little too light and fluffy for me, and it also radically de-ages Batgirl into a character that suddenly feels like a teenager. It also involves way too many pop culture and social media references for my tastes. However, this is a run adored by many fans. It does stand separate from the preceding issues in terms of tone and content, so I guess all I can say is make up your own mind. There are constant rumours that an omnibus of this Burnside era is going to be announced, but as yet, at the time of filming, that's not the case. If you do read it, I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so scrolling back, let's have a look back where we were on this map. Let's move back to the central bit. Okay, the next series we're going to look at is way over on the other side, actually. So if we zoom in and look at the Batman family, I want to look today at Red Hood and The Outlaws, which is the third circle along you can see. Now, this is an extremely controversial and unpopular series in the New 52. and it ran from 2011 to 2015. Now, remember, this is called Red Hood and The Outlaws. It's important to remember that. You'll find out why in a second. This was written by Scott Lobdell with art by Kenneth Rocafort. This run landed to immediate disapproval from fans. The backlash centred especially around the character of Starfire, who is one of the outlaws, and the overtly sexualised nature of her behaviour. So this is volume 1 called Redemption. It contains issues 1 to 7. I'm going to follow it up here, and what we have is volume 2, which is called The Starfire. That contains issues 8 to 14. And remember, issue 9 is part of the crossover Night of the Owls that we discussed in video 5.1. Generally, this collection is pretty average. Interestingly, there's a short backup feature that spans across issues 10 and 11 called Essence. So if you're reading it in single issues, keep an eye out for that one. Let's continue scrolling up, and we get to volume 3, which is called Death of the Family. I love that cover. Like I say, and like I've said many times before, this is called Death of the Family because a lot of the third trade collection are called Death in the Family. So not just this one, Batman and Robin next to it, Nightwing next to that, and so on. So this volume collects issues 15 to 18, and also Teen Titans 16. So that's worth keeping in mind. Whilst this collects the stuff that's part of the Death of the Family crossover, is unique in that it also has a tie-in with Teen Titans. So a tie-in within the crossover, as it were. Anyway, as I'm saying throughout, you don't need to read this as part of the whole event. This collection makes sense by itself. It collects the Batman finale issue 17 for that. And as well as that, it collects the essential issue you need from Teen Titans. That's why Teen Titans is way over on the other side of the map. Don't worry about it. So with that out of the way, let's continue heading upwards. And we have volume 4, which sits right on the Forever Evil line there. So volume 4 is called League of Assassins, and it contains issues 19 to 26 and annual 1. Let's continue heading up, and we have volume 5, which is called The Big Picture. That contains issues 27 to 31. It also contains 2 issues of DC Universe Presents. That's issues 17 and 18. And that's a series I'm going to cover in video 14.1, so you'll get there in a little while. Okay, continuing up, and this series, by the way, still wasn't popular even at this stage. Continuing up, we've got volume 6, which is this one, which is called Lost and Found. It contains issues 32 to 34 and annual 2. It also contains 2 issues of Secret Origins as well. That's issues 2 and issues 5. Again, that series is going to be covered in video 14.1. And then finally, let's take this up right to the end, right up just before the convergence line. We have the last volume of Red Hood and the Outlaws. It's called Last Call. It's volume 7. It contains issues 35 to 40 and the Future's End one-shot. And that's the end of the series. That takes us to the convergence line. However, this series then moves smoothly on to... Here we are. This series is called Red Hood Arsenal. That's why I mentioned before, we've gone from Red Hood and the Outlaws to Red Hood Arsenal. Red Hood Arsenal followed directly on from Red Hood and the Outlaws. It ran from 2015 to 2016. It's still written by Scott Lobdell, but is now drawn by a variety of different artists, and it marks the departure of Starfire from the team. We'll come back to her in video 9.2 and find out where she's gone. So for this series, we've got volume 1, which is called Open for Business. It collects issues 1 to 6. And if we scroll up, it ends right here, right at the end, with volume 2, Dancing with the Devil's Daughter. That collects issues 7 to 13. One of those issues is also a tie-in for Robin War, as I recall. And again, as I said last time, I try to tie these in thematically so you can loop a circle between the relevant volume of Red Hood Arsenal and then Robin War, Robinson and Batman, Grayson, Gotham Academy, all the way. So, like I say, the groups are generally grouped together by crossover to make the map make a little bit more sense if you're printing out and following it at home. So that's the whole of the series. It's not available in hardcover format at all, guys, only trade paperbacks. However, this is one of the only New 52 series that actually got the omnibus treatment. I've got no idea why, as it's universally reviled. But volume 1 of the omnibus is out here and collects the first 27 issues. That's the 27 issues of Red Hood and the Outlaws, plus the crossovers. Now I'm going to admit something here. Don't judge me, but I have bought this. and I bought it mainly because of the amazing artwork by Kenneth Rocafort, which I just thought was brilliant. That and the fact that, I'll be honest, personally, I didn't find the storyline that bad. I thought it was okay. If there's a second omnibus, a future volume of this, and nothing's been solicited at the time while I'm filming this, I imagine it's going to collect the remaining issues of Red Hood and the Outlaws and then Red Hood Arsenal, if it's going to try to be a similar thickness. But that's only my guess. Okay, so we're going to zoom back from this picture and have a look here. Still got some time today, so why not cover one more series? Let's cover Batwing. So Batwing is the westmost and leftmost series we have here. So the Batwing, it's this circle here with the Batwing image just before we get to the new storm circles in yellow, which we'll cover in videos 11. So this series was written from 2011 to 2014. It was written originally by Judd Winnick, and it spins out of the introduction of the Batwing character in the pre-New 52 Batman Incorporated series, which I mention and explain a lot better than that in video 5.3. This is the only time that Batwing actually features sort of as its own series, which is great. So this is volume 1, and this is volume 1. Here you're seeing the trade collection called The Lost Kingdom, contains issues 1 to 6. Let's scroll up and across and stay on the Batwing. There we are. Batwing Trade Collection 2 is called In the Shadow of the Ancients. That contains issues 0 and issues 7 to 12 if you're reading along in single issues. This of course includes issues 9, which is when Batwing crosses over into the Bat Family event Night of the Owls. It's pretty forgettable, but it is the only time it crosses over into any of the other crossover events. Okay, heading on there, what we see here is Trade Collection 3. You'll see that cover there. This is called Enemy of the State. It contains issues 13 to 18. And it's at this point, at the end of Collection 3, that the series undergoes a huge shift in tone and setting. I'm afraid that Judd Winnick leaves and is replaced by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti. Similarly, the series actually rapidly changes setting from Africa to Gotham, and the main character actually changes as well. As such, issue 19, which is collected in the 4th volume, has to rapidly wrap up all those loose ends and then pivot the entire series to a new focus. I'll be honest, guys, I loved the first 3 volumes of Batwing. I thought it was absolutely great. I thought Winnick's run was brilliant, and I hated the pivot to a much more generic Gotham setting. And for more on what I did about this, you might want to see my video on my custom Batwing bind, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. But anyway, this is volume 3. If we scroll up and move across past the Forever Evil line, oh, way too far, hang on. There's volume 4 here. Oh, I'm getting lost. Right. Yes, there's volume 4 there. This is called Welcome to the Family. It contains issues 19 to 26. I wasn't a fan of it, as I said. Issue 25 is part of Crossover 3, 0 Year, that I discussed in video 5.1, but it's pretty readable as a standalone one-shot once you know that. Let's continue up to the final issue in this series, which is here. And this is called Into the Dark. It contains issues 27 to 34 and the Batwing Futures End one-shot. I'm afraid issue 27 is part of Crossover 4, Gothtopia, that I discussed in video 5.2. But again, once you understand that, it's pretty readable as a standalone. None of these are available as hardcovers, so it's trade paperbacks only for any Batwing that you want to read. That's one of the reasons I got mine custom bound. And of course, remember, I read all these as single issues originally. Alright, let's scroll back out to the map and let's have a look at where we are. Do you know what? Let's cover one more issue today. One more series. So, from Flashpoint, let's have a look at a series called Talon. So I've put Talon here, actually next to Birds of Prey, between Birds of Prey and Catwoman, and you'll see why in a second. So it's between Birds of Prey and Catwoman and just past the Forever Evil line. Let's zoom in. This is a short-lived series, by the way. It ran from 2012 to 2013. It was written by Scott Snyder at first, and is incrementally taken over by James Tynion the fourth. It's a pretty short limited series of 17 issues. However, don't be misled into thinking this is a Night of the Owls crossover in any way. Although it's called Talon, and although the main character is a Talon, there's nothing to do with that. It's totally separate. What we're looking at here is trade collection 1 called Scourge of the Owls. That contains issues 0 to issue 7. And that's pretty okay. And if we follow it up, the second and final trade collection is here. This is called Fall of the Owls and contains issues 8 to issue 17. So all those, the rest of the series. It also contains Birds of Prey issue 21. Don't worry about this tie-in. It's collected here within the volume and it makes sense. As you can see, I've organised it on the map next to where it ties in just to make it make a bit more sense. As a whole, I found Talon quite mediocre. Alright, that was nice and quick. And I think, to be honest guys, that's going to be the end of what we have time to cover for today. That's video 5.5 and I'll finish mopping up the rest in the next video 5.6. Thanks for watching and I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, please like, comment, subscribe and share more widely on Facebook and Instagram if you can. I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on the new 52 and the Batman videos especially. Is this clear enough? Is it covering everything? Have I missed anything? Hit me up in the comments below to let me know or tweet me at @IamThomasJudge. And as always, please support the channel by heading over to Amazon and picking up the first episode of my prose novel, No Gods or Kings, which is for less than $1 and over 200 pages of content. It's a series of interviews from a future where superpowers are real. And the entire world has changed dramatically as a result. If you have Kindle Unlimited, the first volume is already completely free, so why not pick it up? If you're interested in downloading the map that you're looking at right now, then that's also available on the same website as the novel. So that's nogodsorkings.com, and that's in the description below. So whilst you're there, why not check out the first book, or even just read a free excerpt. Until next time, stay classy.